The United States is once again facing a very real risk of another credit rating downgrade. And if that happens, the consequences won't just stay on paper. They will affect everyday people through higher interest rates, weaker purchasing power, and more financial pressure. Right now, there are three major credit rating agencies that matter the most: Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. Their job is simple. They assess whether a country can responsibly manage its finances and repay its debts. The highest possible rating is a AA. That rating signals maximum trust, strong financial discipline, and long-term stability. But here's the reality. The United States no longer holds a full AA rating. Back in 2011, Standard & Poor's was the first to downgrade U.S. debt. Their reasoning was clear: excessive borrowing and a lack of a credible long-term plan to control deficits. Then in 2023, Fitch followed. They cited political dysfunction, repeated debt ceiling crises, and reckless fiscal policy. Soon after that, Moody's also downgraded its outlook, warning that America's political divisions were pushing the country dangerously close to default scenarios. So now all three major agencies are signaling the same thing: America's financial credibility is weakening. And a natural question people ask is, do these downgrades actually matter? The answer is yes, absolutely. When a country's credit rating falls, borrowing becomes more expensive. That means higher yields on treasury bonds. And since treasury rates influence almost everything, mortgages, car loans, credit cards, business loans, the pain eventually spreads across the entire economy. On top of that, repeated downgrades weaken global confidence in the U.S. dollar and America's role as the world's financial anchor. And based on the direction things are heading, it's hard to argue that the situation is improving. In fact, the warning signs are getting louder. Let's break down why. First, look at the interest payments alone. In 2020, the U.S. government paid roughly $345 billion just in interest. In 2021, that number rose again. By 2022, interest costs jumped sharply. In 2023, interest payments crossed $650 billion. In 2024, they climbed close to $900 billion. And now, in 2025, interest expenses are approaching $1 trillion per year. Let that sink in. Out of roughly $5 trillion in total government revenue, nearly 20% is being consumed just to pay interest, not to fund programs, not to improve infrastructure, not to help citizens, but simply to serve its past debt. This is not sustainable. And the root of the problem is the national debt itself. Right now, U.S. national debt is approaching $40 trillion. At the current pace, crossing that threshold is only a matter of time. And the more debt that exists, the more interest must be paid, creating a dangerous feedback loop. So here's the uncomfortable question most people don't ask: who is actually responsible for paying this debt back? The answer, in theory, is the federal government. But in reality, the money comes from taxpayers, today and in the future. Every time the government borrows money, it issues treasury bonds. Those bonds must eventually be repaid using tax revenue. So when trillions are borrowed, the financial burden doesn't disappear. It's transferred to citizens. To future workers. To future generations. That's why people often say the debt is being passed on to our children. And when you step back and think about it, the scale of this obligation is staggering. Now, let's talk about why another downgrade is likely coming. Credit rating agencies don't just look at numbers. They look at behavior. Patterns. Discipline. And right now, the U.S. government is showing multiple red flags. First, deficits continue to rise year after year. Balanced budgets are no longer even discussed seriously. Second, interest costs are exploding and becoming one of the largest federal expenses. Third, political dysfunction is worsening. Congress struggles to pass basic funding bills, and debt ceiling standoffs have become routine. Fourth, there is no long-term solution for Social Security or Medicare programs that are heading toward insolvency within the next decade. And finally, debt is growing faster than the economy itself. Historically, one of the clearest warning signs of sovereign debt crises. If another downgrade happens, the consequences could be severe. Mortgage rates could rise further. Auto loans could become more expensive. Business investment could slow. Financial markets could become more volatile. Foreign demand for U.S. debt could weaken. And in response, the Federal Reserve may be forced to intervene, which usually means one thing: more money creation. And when money printing becomes the solution, the long-term result is almost always higher inflation, weaker purchasing power, and a declining currency. So the big question becomes, can this be fixed? In theory, there are only three options. The first is cutting government spending, but politically, this is extremely difficult. No one wants to be responsible for cutting programs or losing votes. The second option is raising taxes, but even aggressive tax increases wouldn't come close to solving a $40 trillion problem. The third option is printing money. It's the easiest path politically, and unfortunately, it's the one history suggests is most likely, but it comes at a cost: inflation, inequality, and erosion of trust in the dollar. To be clear, the United States is not going bankrupt tomorrow, but the trend is moving in the wrong direction. And credit rating agencies see the same patterns that we do: rising debt, rising interest costs, growing dysfunction, no credible plan forward. Because of that, another downgrade isn't just possible. It's probable. The only question is when and which agency moves first. My expectation is that we'll see another downgrade deeper into 2026 or sometime in 2027. When it happens, the blame will be shifted, but the reality is simple. These conditions didn't appear overnight. They were created over years of policy decisions, and when the consequences arrive, it won't be Washington that feels them first. It will be the people. Please subscribe. Thank you for the support, and I wish you a very nice day. Take care.